Gary Fisher.
Okay.
Thank you
Yes.
so living legend on my podcast. This is amazing. I'm feeling very blessed today to work with to be able to talk with you. So I sent you over some questions. Maybe we can start with just kind of how did you start getting into cycling? I guess we'll start there.
Well, I was just a kid and living in Burlingame, and
Where?
Burlingame, California, by
Okay.
San Mateo. It's by the airport,
Okay.
right down there on the peninsula. And I and I fell in with a bunch of older guys. Basically, I was like really young, like 12, 13. And I was hanging out at a bike shop, San Mateo bike shop. And these guys were older, like 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And the ringleader was a guy named Larry Walpole. Larry was Cockney. I mean, complete stereotype accent and everything. Total jokes and everything. Had been a cyclist forever, and was the ringleader of the BBC, or Belmont Bike Club. And those guys who I fell in the first year, and they used to go on rides, and I'd go tag along with. But like a first thing, like these other kids were hanging out there, like 15, 16 at the bike shop. And they say, well, we're going on a ride. And I say, can I come? They say, no, you're too little. And so I just followed them. And I got back to the bike shop. I like followed them the whole way on their ride. And I said, can I be in a club? And they said, yeah, you could be a mascot. And oh man, I just started crying right then and there. And they said, okay, we'll make you a member and everything. And so, I got a jersey.
This was road cycling.
Yeah.
Road cycling.
Because that's all there was.
Drop bars.
Yeah.
All that. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, my hero at the time was Gino Bartali, and one of my friends, his hero was Fausto Coppi, and Eddie Merckx hadn't ridden his first Tour de France. Right. That's how long ago that was.
60s.
And there were like 120 members of the ABLFA, which was the predecessor to the Federation, the same thing and everything. And that's and when you see another bike rider, man, and they weren't like a DUI victim or like, an obvious kid, you'd stop them, and you either knew who they were or like you exchanged phone numbers. And it was a really, really tight knit little community of misfits.
So I guess you're riding in a club. Sounds like the road cycling is a big, has its own community. And you were deep into that. So when does this whole concept of, I guess, I don't know if we want to jump already ahead to when did you start considering making bikes?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a long time later, but I've got photos I took in '64 of a cross race in Tilden Park, but nobody had really that much specialist equipment, and it was a once, twice a year thing. And that had been going on for, there were people that were hooked in to what was going on in Europe, here in the Bay Area. And they'd, sell the bikes. There's guys like Spence Wolf down in Cupertino, and Peter Rich over in Berkeley, and they go there. They go to Italy and go to France and check out these races. And so we had like sort of a direct connection, and that was as much as it got, because there was no video. 16 millimeter films are around, but not that many, that you get your hands on and everything. And that was about it that you had. It was so crazy. And you had people that would bring in the stuff and say, this is how it's used and everything. And certain people would come over. I mean, when I was a kid, 12, 13, I was riding at the velodrome at Hellier Velodrome. It had just opened, it was like I was there for opening day and everything. And it had its own culture. And like Marcello Mugelli, who was a Italian pro, and he was there. And like, man, he taught me how to go up and down and get rid of people. I'm really good at it. I'm a natural. I learned from a pro. It was crazy.
And
12, 13.
had you been on
You know,
had you been on track bike before that?
oh yeah. I mean, that was
Yeah,
part of the thing. It was like you were gonna master every discipline. Catch there weren't that many disciplines,
sure.
and like cyclocross was really fringe compared to the track. The track was where it was at back then. I mean, that was the thing. Bike racing was this phenomenon that happened on a velodrome that never completely died. But like road cycling, boy, there wasn't even a national championships for a long time until like I think it was like 65 in LA, Los Angeles, they had it, a road race. They didn't have a road race the year before. And for a long time before that, there weren't that many people, and people would ride road races with track bikes, fixed gear bikes, sometimes, or they put a freewheel on it and a couple of, clamp on brakes.
So you guys
It
were
just,
you guys were really influenced by Europe. You're obviously
yeah,
and so that was sort of the pinnacle of cycling in your world at the time.
at that time. And then it was like, I, uh, I moved to Marin when I was like 15 and a half and Redwood High School. And there was a gang of kids that liked to go do drumming, the drum circle, and a couple of older guys. Casey Sauna band. He was like the really good conga drummer, and he'd pony up and rent a hall and all this sort of stuff. And Dickens Bascom was the original glued art guy, that glued, like covered a car with all kinds of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And it became a total art form and everything. And that guy lived in Larkspur Canyon. And then there was the Larkspur Canyon gang, which were a bunch of high school kids my age. I was a junior in high school at Redwood High. I was new to Marin, and it was weird. I mean, there was like a lot of prejudice against me, like not being from here. It's crazy, for that many years and everything. But at any rate, Larkspur Canyon gang, they had this scene going on with balloon tire bikes. And, you know, I would, been putting gears on it and really good brakes just sort of came naturally to me because was always a bike geek, and I was into all the kind of equipment you could possibly get, which in the 60s, the pinnacle was Campagnolo, unless you were
And yellow
French.
group sets, yeah.
Yeah.
What frames did you have? Were those like hand welded frames from like
Oh yeah.
local?
I mean, well, Lars Zabrowski had it. He was a racer and he like would have hopped up Volkswagen buses that went really fast. Back in the day when like all you could buy was a split window Volkswagen bus. He had one with the door on the opposite side. It was like a utility thing. It was totally rare. Crazy stuff and Porsches and stuff he'd have. And he started building frames. And at the time, he was the guy in California. And then the other guy was like out in Chicago. They could build you a custom frame. And he built me a frame out of really super light Reynolds tubing and everything, like when I was 14. And I outgrew it, flat out, but it was a good bike. But he was building bikes and he was, yeah, he was he didn't do all that many bikes and everything. It wasn't a real commercial thing at all, but no, I mean, in school, I took metal shop and jewelry. I got straight A's. I love doing stuff with my hands and all that. But then later, much later, I mean, 79, I was still a road racer. My roommate was Kent Bostick, and Bostick won a lot of races and won a number of national championships on the road, time trial. And it was great living with him. The discipline, training, getting to a whole nother level of fitness and everything. And I was out there in Colorado Springs, all the other, wannabes. And Jimmy Carter said, well, we're not going to Moscow. We boycotted the Olympics. And at that moment, I said, well, time to start the bike company. because they had that idea. That idea was around for a long time. I mean, Larkspur Canyon Gang, let's circle around again. It's in high school. I went out with these guys, and it would be, you go out with six guys and ride a bike because that was the side thing. They did, it was mostly going out in the woods and doing drum circles and stuff like that. That's what the organization, Larkspur Canyon Gang was. And then the other part was like, well, they used balloon tire bikes to get around out in the woods. And they were the major charm of that bike.
Balloon tire bike? What does that mean?
Well, what it means is 26 by 2125 tire, knobby, Uniroyal knobby. You could buy it in any bike shop in the United States, $11.99. There it was.
But what about the clearance? What about the clearance? Did the bikes have the clearance?
Oh yeah, that was the thing. They were all like, and the ones that were the best were pre-World War II, because
more clearance.
After World War II, they lowered the bottom bracket, about an inch, so they could like fit a smaller kid on the bike. They made it a toy, basically. You go back to Schwinn bikes that were made in the 30s, and man, it was a different, same designs, the one-piece crank and all these sort of like total, like great, simple, super simple designs, but in better material and better finished. You look at the cranks, you look at the headsets, you look at the stems, you go, wow, that's nice. Nice material, good material, good hard material. They cheapened all that stuff out after World War II.
Sure.
Cheaper materials, cheaper finishing and everything. And we're just going after like a lower price and everything.
Sure, of course.
But the charm of that bike at the Larkspur Canyon Gang is you could find one between $5 and $10, a complete bike.
Where would you find them?
You'd find them at the dumps.
Okay.
You'd find them at the secondhand stores. There were places sort of famous for them in the Bay Area that would have one. They'd pop up, and you'd get one. And that was it. I mean, you go out with six people on six bikes, and three of them would come back dragging the bike behind them. It was ridiculous, So me, it's like much later, I just say, oh, because I wanted to get serious about a town, or a clunker again, because like I'd been I did a whole thing before that. I hung out with the Grateful Dead between I met them at a bike race in '66, and I sort of ran away from home, and I hung with them in the hate. I was there for most of that crazy stuff, man. I was right there. Jack Leary, Timothy's son, he was my best friend. We're the same age. I mean, I worked at the Carousel Ballroom too for the whole time it was there, which was about a little less than 6 months. It was crazy. I worked for the Jefferson Airplane. I decorated their mansion when they first bought it. Worked for Bill Thompson, their manager. Worked for Marty Ballin, the singer, when he was doing stuff in Mill Valley. What a sweetheart. What a nice guy. Worked for the Bear. Oh my goodness, I didn't go to my graduation. I was on a ranch outside of Laytonville, California. Orange Sunshine? Holy yes, that's what we were doing. And did that stuff, that crazy thing. And it was nuts. And Altamont, I was there for the whole organizing it. It was going to be the Rolling Stones in Golden Gate Park. Didn't quite work out. Went to
there was a murder.
It was a mess,
Yeah.
and everybody left town after that, literally. So I moved to Kentfield with a band called New Riders of the Purple Sage, and that was an offshoot of the Dead. And we had a place in Kentfield on Hermit Lane, and the band would be gone for a lot of the time. I just ride my bike, and I got back in shape, and I became first category in like 1 year. And came back, and that was like early 70s. But I never had a good coach. I never knew, I think about how I rode and everything. I made a bunch of tactical errors and everything. And I rode Greg and Bob Lamond, when he was a punk kid. Man, he was like, that was part of my decision of like, I'm not going to be the very best as a road racer. Because he was just naturally at another level, I mean, Bostic was incredible, super strong and everything, but then Greg like flew above it all effortlessly, just effortlessly. And at that moment, you go like, "Oh, I'm playing on a different level,"
Humbling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then started a company, and named it Mountain Bikes, and learned all about trademarks the hard way.
Well,
Didn't do it right.
tell me about that. So you had what gave you the idea for, I mean, the mountain bike? Because
It just was a really strong sounding name. It was a partially descriptive, but not quite. I mean, you could ride the bike on the flats. You didn't need a mountain. That's been proven again and again.
but
You know,
it
it was
was a
that was
solution to a problem.
well, it wasn't a problem. It was a solution. You can get out in the woods really fast without leaving a big mark on it. And it was quiet. That was the other thing.
Cool.
Relatively quiet to the rest of the whole scene. That, and then there was the whole aspect of rip, tear, shred, got to get some air. I mean, that was there, from the very beginning. You couldn't help it because you see, I back in the 60s, I'd take a cross bike, or what we thought was, you'd set up a bike sort of like a cross bike. You could get the cyclocross, these really nice Clement Grifos, knobbies. They were like 26 millimeters wide, but that's what they were riding, and you could get them. So you'd set up a bike that had good clearance with that. That was the best anybody had right then. And you use a brake like the Mayfac Tiger, which had a tremendous amount of leverage and everything. It was a super powerful brake. And it had some good clearance for a center pull brake, which was, what was everything was rigged for then. I mean, nobody made a cross bike for themselves at that moment. It just wasn't.
Super niche.
There was like 2 races a year.
Right.
That was it at that time. So, I mean, and I set up a bike like that too, but it was like, I finally landed the job. I was Bicycling Magazine's first road tester, and that was like free bikes all the time. It was really great, and I learned a lot about the industry, and I met a lot of people during that time. It was very helpful, for later on and everything.
You were able to be sort of almost like an influencer, or maybe just in the industry early on. You're able to kind of have your nose in it, and so I guess the question that comes to me is like, when did you first have like a prototype of a mountain bike? Like, what was the first?
Well, the first bikes were just like a found object, right? It's like the alloy rim wasn't there until, the spring of 1979. Before that, we used steel chrome plated rims. And if you put a cantilever brake on it, it was like a joke. It's just like it worked when everything was perfectly dry, but the minute anything got moist, you had a disaster. You didn't have a brake. So that wasn't an option. So we used drum brakes, and prefer the bigger the better. And the biggest drum brakes were on tandem bikes. So we scour the land for tandems. It was ridiculous. I mean,
So
the Schwinn twin tandem, this classic tandem, had a set of Union drum brakes, and that was a good set of brakes.
So
You could buy.
the problem was stopping. Like you were able to build something that had enough tire and control where you could go, but the problem was stopping. You couldn't stop these things.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is if you try to like contain all the heat in a little tiny coaster brake, even a big coaster brake like the Moro coaster brake, what a beautiful piece it was, but they would overheat and all the grease would come right out of it, and they just like die there, and they die in the middle of a ride, and just having a rear brake, forget about it.
No,
It was crazy.
well, it's
They were just
dangerous. It's dangerous.
well, you bet it was. I mean, and that was part of the charm. But you'd learn to like put the thing sideways, put the bike sideways, and everything. And there are riders now that can ride with no brakes. I mean, they'll just put the whole bike sideways, because the skill level's got to be so good. But at that time, what we started doing in the mid 70s, and I was the first kid on the block to like get it wired back in 74. but it was was to put drum brakes with motorcycle cables and motorcycle brake levers, because all the brake levers of the time for a flat bar were these little tiny things like there were Weinman little things that would dig into your fingers and not provide much leverage on the
Right.
cables. And the cables outside of Campagnolo, all the cables were wound, so they had a bit of compression in the casings, and they were, you couldn't pull on those drum brakes hard enough, and so if you had a set of motorcycle levers and a set of motorcycle cables, it was good to go, and there were, and then so that was a good braking thing. And then the Japanese were starting to come out with wide range gearing, and then you'd slap a double or triple on the front, and that's how you got the
Reclining,
wide
because
range.
that was the other problem was the climbing.
Well, there was a guy, the local guy, Fred Wolf. That dude put together a ton of rides, and Fred was insistent on, I'm going to be able to climb every hill in Marin County and go down every hill, like all these little stupid, steep stuff. And he was good at it. And he'd use, and I'd help him like set up bikes all the time. And like for a while there, he had a set of Ashtabula, one piece cranks, but they were 186 millimeters long, from center to center from the crank arm center, the crank center to the pedal and everything. Super long cranks. And then we had like what was it, like a 26, 36, 46 on the front, or no. Yeah, we had a chainring setups. I got a whole bunch of different ones. I found a whole bunch. It was all about found stuff at the time, and some imported stuff. Like you see, when I was with bicycling. Oh man, one time I had this positron, shifter and rear derailleur, and that was like an SIS setup, but it was indented at the rear derailleur, and it worked with their freewheel and everything. And I put that on my clunker, so SAS. But it's funny. All that stuff was happening in the mid 70s, and it was crazy. It was like we started doing the repack race and everything, and it was a local phenomena, and it was nuts. And then comes like the whole thing, the publicity side of it, but that was later more.
When did, I guess we're talking about the genesis of the technical aspects of it, which it sounds like a Frankenstein. So there was sort of a Frankenstein.
Oh no, it was all found objects, right? And everything changed. And the moment it changed.
When did you want to commercialize it? It sounds like you had. I mean, you mentioned earlier that we had
a plan. It was a plan,
right? But it sounds like you maybe didn't have the best advisors.
Well, there's always, sometimes no advice and sometimes a lot of the wrong advice. Okay. What happened though? Oh man, it was just a pastime and it was a lot of fun. Okay, finally, I'm working for Bicycling Magazine in 1981. They asked me to do a presentation at the New York Bike Show because we had and man, this is all like coincidence. There'd been a 5-year photo shoot going on. Wendy and Larry Craig. Larry Craig has, been the Neil Young's steel guitarist forever. You're all musician people, and Wendy, they did all the rides for like 5 years, man. They did, they did a bunch of repack race, ton of photography. They bring these motor drive Nikon cameras, 35 millimeter, good quality cameras, out on all the rides, and they showed up for all the rides. And so Marin County, like all this crazy stuff, we'd go explore all over. And then the Sierra Nevadas and Colorado, and they had like 5 years worth of stuff. And we do slideshows. Okay, Howie Hammerman, he was, sound man for the Sons of Champlin, along with Charlie Kelly. Charlie was a roadie. He was a sound guy. Well, he was George Lucas's third employee. So we had to run at George Lucas's screening room in his house. And we do like slideshows there once a month. And
of your rides.
Yeah. And Charlie and I had it nailed. Okay. So New York Bike Show, 1981, all the big wigs in the industry show up at this show because they've heard about it. You know, I've been getting press on the whole thing, real press, you know,
But
like
press from
that's it.
content, like imagery of you riding these bikes that you had to design and build in the mountains.
Well, this was, you know, the presentation in 81 was more like just the concept.
Of
And it was
what?
all
What
like
was, tell me what the
of
concept was.
riding off road on like a total freaking roller coaster and just coming out with this huge freaking smile out of the most beautiful place in the world.
And this was totally new. Like people just riding around in the mountains like this was just unheard of.
At that time, yeah. I mean, people didn't do that on bikes, man. That was crazy.
Totally
So
new.
anyway, we nailed it. And the next year, I mean, I had maybe 500 visitors from Japan at our place looking at it and everything. People coming in and saying, "This is it." I thought it'd be huge. You know, but it was the press side. My mom and my grandfather, they advised me. My grandfather worked, you know, he was the editor of the Hollywood High newspaper. Straight out of high school, he got a job with Hal B. Wallace, the guy, the seminal Hollywood publicist, you know, and he used to do, like, I got books of these articles, you know, that he'd written for a star. Well, so and so, when she wants to do this and that, relies on this and that to, and done in this way, you know. And so it's all these hooks, you know, and everything. He did that. And then he worked for Warner Brothers for 40 years and created a job called the script supervisor and created American Broadcast English. And, you know, he worked with the actors in that time between silent movies and talkies because they had to learn to speak, you know. And he did a lot of films that you've heard of, you know.
And so he was helping you publicize. Now, at this time, did you have a company
But
yet? Was there a
yeah, I
business?
mean, we founded the company called Mountain Bikes in, you know, in September of 79.
September of 79, a company
Yeah,
called Mountain Bikes.
that was my company, myself and Charlie Kelly. We started like $600. You know, we
Who's
didn't have.
who is Charlie Kelly?
Charlie Kelly was my partner back then. He was a roadie for a band called Sons of Champlin, and we were roommates together. And I got my roommate in on the thing, which isn't always the best advice, you know. I mean, we split up 3 years later. It wasn't working out. You know, you
But
couldn't.
what was the business? What exactly were you guys doing? You were
We were
buying.
like, we were buying, we were making, we were buying frames that were already built by other frame builders.
Okay,
And the most principal one was Tom Ritchie. He
right.
was fast. He could do like 50 frames in a week, you know,
Okay.
and all one size, you know, no paint. You know, we do had three different painters. I had 7 people building wheels. It was like crazy, you know, just like because the demand was incredible. And I changed the price point of what people thought they want to spend on a bike. I mean, our initial bike was $1,320 in 1979. Oh my God. You know,
So it
you
was a
could buy
lot.
a lot. You could buy a total custom Ben Sirota full Campy. And here's the thing about Campagnolo. Campagnolo created their own gray market. Campagnolo used to give complete groups to teams as payment. So the teams would sell them for whatever they could get for them, you know? And so at that time, you could buy a full-on Colnagle, full Campy for $450. It was crazy, you
So
know? And
why
so I was,
why did you choose this price point? Because it sounds
because
like
I needed to get it because the stuff I did stuff in the way of really exquisite bikes. I mean, really nice paint and really nice equipment. I mean, a lot of exotic equipment, you know, at the
so it
time.
wasn't
And
it wasn't just you decided to get more margin. This really was indicative of what of the components that you were putting in this thing and the
right.
cost.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I figured, you know, for what I wanted to do was really get the approval of all the bike geeks, you know, the best mechanics, the best shops saying, oh, yeah. So it'd be all Campagnolo English standards, all the fitments and everything.
Mhm.
It used all those metric style fitments that were really like, oh, this is the real deal, sort of thing. A real mechanic would look at it and say, yeah, this is a righteous bike that's put together that way. And
So
so
you,
everywhere I tried to do a high quality bike because, I'd say to people, well, you don't want a cheap parachute, do you? And
no, of course
people,
not.
they,
Of course not.
and people, you know, we had to line out the door all the time. It's
So you
crazy. Like,
had demand. There was demand.
oh, big time, because it was also, my mom taught me, I got the ABC book back then. You could rely on that in those days. That was really a real gauge of what a circulation was and everything. And you go to the newsstand, and you'd look for a thick piece, you'd look for a good ad ratio, and you'd just start cold calling on the masthead. And I had it down, and I had good material. My mom would say, "Oh, Gary, you're just going to throw that in the garbage. That photographer's no good." you know, and it's amazing, and people are, she'd say, "Oh, Gary, you're doing their job for them, you know, providing content. If
Sure.
content is quality and interesting, it'll fly." And it worked. I mean, and it's really funny. A lot of bike uh, marketing people, they'll say, "Oh yeah, we got in all the magazines." Then I'll correct them, qualify them, and say, "You got into bike magazines, And all that has been doing traditionally is reach the mechanics and the hardcores that are asked for advice and that sort of thing. It's like, no, 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 that's not that's not moving the needle. That's not doing anything. Because the truth of the matter was, it was a lot about space. I mean, there was a lot of places in the United States that were really unexplored, and that was like a lot of the charm in the beginning. Is like, we're going to places, within just a few hours, like the Sierra Club, those guys would take, the whole day. I mean, full on the whole day, much harder to do the whole thing. And, it wasn't that hard on things. We didn't make a lot of noise, like in
Like a
the,
motorcycle.
no, and hey, a bike and a human being doesn't have that much power, so there isn't that much sliding around as people would think, and it's not like what a motorcycle does, at all. So it was really good that way. At the same time, it was like, live life, get close to death, right? It had those aspects going
I
for
love
it,
that.
right? Well, yeah, you know, and that's really what's kept it going is people go out and they get addicted to having fun in a natural way, and now we have even like peer-reviewed medical papers that say this movement that skater makes, side to side surfer makes, skier makes, bike rider makes, actually makes a human happy,
Moving
so
meditation.
it's, yeah, and man, it's like no one argues with me when I say, hey, the world does need more happiness. Nobody argues. So I never feel guilty about selling more bikes, and simple bikes or like really, really, this whole like NASA makes stuff like this, and so does Formula One. But you can't afford those things, but you can afford a bike made in that way. So those are ridiculous. I mean, they're 15, 20 grand these days for something like Uber, and there's a lot of people been doing it for a while. So the stuff actually works and the stuff actually lasts. So it's not uber stupid. It's like not like, you go out and drive it and then it's got to be totally tuned up and taken apart and put back together to go for the next drive. That's a real race car. They're meant to last how long? Well, how long's the event? Yeah, like that. And a bike is much better, actually. Some bikes are so specialized they almost get to that point, but a bike's expected to last through rain and all sorts of stuff, and 5 6 hour long event. And a mountain bike, oh my god, the mountain bike courses are rougher than ever, for the real top pros and all that. And then on the other hand, the stuff that's really popular is what everybody can do. So that's like gravel racing is like, it's sort of like what mountain biking used to be when we didn't do anything technical. It's funny. I mean, words and meanings will shift around over time. It takes time, 20 years. Yeah, we got 20 years time. it'll shift. So
So
it's go
so
ahead.
you founded the company called Mountain Bikes, and then
Yep.
that dissolved in '83. It sounded like,
No, it
um,
didn't dissolve
no,
at
okay,
all. Charlie left the company.
your partner.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Everything else stayed intact. I mean,
So you
why
were,
do
and
I
then
want to
that's when it
dissolve it?
transitioned. That's when it transitioned
I
to Gary
changed.
Fisher Mountain Bikes.
Well, that happened. Yeah, yeah, and that happened right away. You know, we just did it that way. We put Fisher mountain bikes on. Actually, we were Fisher mountain bikes for a while, and then we had a friendly disagreement, a friendly meeting with the guys at Fisher Ski because their logo was close to mine. The whole
Okay.
thing, man.
It
And
sounds like
like
you
we
had some
just
lawyer fees with the trademarks over the
no,
years.
no, that didn't cost a cent.
Oh, good.
We all settled it amongst ourselves, and it was satisfactory. I put my front name on the thing, and it was fine. That's why I put my front name on it, just to make more differentiation. You don't want to confuse your consumer as to who you are and everything. So no, it's been yeah, at least I learned about this stuff, and I got a lot of names out there that I thought of, I'm proud of, and somebody else owns right now, which is fine because I'm
Well,
working on some new stuff.
well, no, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's so throughout the '80s, this stuff took off. I mean, I
Oh
guess
yeah.
I'm curious to know, like, what was it like in that period when this sort of took off, and what I mean, was it like, did you have a tiger by the tail at that point?
Oh, definitely. Very definitely. It was supply, and it was that way until like almost 91. That's when supply caught up with demand. I mean, that long. It was
So you just
crazy
didn't have
because
enough to sell for years.
yeah, but it was growing in so many different countries. It would, things in those days, it took a long time for stuff to shift around to countries. I mean, you'd have a lot of countries, that they'd order a few containers at the front of the beginning of the year, and that would be it. And then the phenomenon is people started to travel a lot more. And of course, as people got on the internet, they became aware of all of everything, all the brands. And so, it's been the last 20 years, it's been this thing of like going into countries, you say, they buy a lot of really expensive bikes in that country. Yeah. It's like I took my wife to Thailand, about 15 years ago, and she was amazed, like she's just expecting guys in cutoffs and stuff like that. And everybody's got exactly the stuff, exactly, they know exactly what it is because everything's available online. The communication is online, and people literally fly all over the world and see things. So like that has changed completely. The way things used to take years to grow. And so, yes, the mountain bike, I started bringing in good quantities in like 82, 83, and so did like others then. I mean, Ben Lowy down in he had Univega, Specialized, Mike Sinyard. I mean, he was an early believer. And the guys on the East Coast, Ross Bicycles, and it was John Kirkpatrick. He was like the guy who got publicity. Everybody was out getting publicity, and I say everybody in like the big movers, the ones that really do things and make stuff in guerrilla. I was really, really good at my guerrilla marketing, and I got in a lot of big magazines. And oh, I remember we had the cover story on a magazine called On Your Own. I mean, 11.2 million circulation within the United States, and it was totally targeted to high school seniors just before graduation. It had one sponsor, the U.S. Army. We had a magical cover story about Joe Murray and how he started out as a mechanic and sweeping the floor. And he set the records in you know, being a good mechanic, got really good at it. And then he started bike racing and mountain biking, and he won the first race. Oh, well, so and so and so and so weren't here. He won the second race. Oh, what do you mean? He won 7 races in a row, which was crazy. But, in a lot of these races, we'd send out press releases. I had like 160 qualified people on the list, really well qualified. And there'd be 160 people at this event, including dogs, officials, friends. And man, we make it sound like a big thing, right? That's what it takes, and people, and we had great photography, great stuff. I'd hire photographers. Heck, I'd actually pay them because they make good stuff, and um,
but you also made great products. I mean, it sounds like,
oh yeah, you got to make good product.
well,
You definitely,
from talking to you
yeah,
right now, I understand how, I'm understanding how you were able to command a narrative around the mountain bike.
yeah.
Feels like in a pretty strong way coming from,
Well, see, and I want to give credit to the others too. The others that got in there and just did it. I mean, the guys at GT, oh my God, those guys were a genius in what they did. And there's others, that just got in, and people forget, bike 120 years ago, they were all gravel bikes, right? Because that's what people rode on. Weren't any
sure,
paved roads, none of that stuff. This is where we came from. And people say, well, where'd you get this? And they think it's just product. Well, yeah, product is one thing, but man, you got to tell people what it is
the story.
and get people excited, and then you got to deliver the product. The product's got to work, and that was the thing, is that the mountain bike, especially what we started putting out then, was, everything was heavy duty. And it was the first time that high tech had come to heavy duty and was paying for it and everything. It says, we want better seals on this stuff. We're going to use better grease. We're going to use different bearings and stuff that last longer. And all that stuff came. And it's pretty funny. We sort of gone full circle in it too. It's like we've gotten to an extreme where stuff is really expensive, really light, and on the mountain bike would last like 1 year if you're like riding it like crazy, because it's really easy to, I mean, mountain bike stuff just inherently is difficult because you got all this
Dirt and dust
mud,
and
dirt, dust. Yeah.
violence.
Oh, yeah. Heavy duty, So,
So
but
throughout the 80s,
yeah.
it feels like, I mean, feels like you were just watching this thing just take off like a rocket ship.
Oh,
And
and yeah. And there was a ton of competition, and everything was changing, started changing faster and faster, you know.
so you
And
saw that, and you saw that, and
oh, yeah.
did that worry you?
Oh, sure. But at the same time, you want to be able to surf a bigger wave than a small one, you
And
know?
then that's why, you opted to sell the company, because you knew that you didn't have the sort
No,
of
it's more like
financing. Because in
more
the
like
bike business, financing is huge, because you have to
right.
finance containers and containers and containers of product.
No, you're correct. And especially at the time. But it was
Still that way.
all this stuff, though, a lot of things, it's all on personal level, a lot too. It was my brother and I with the company. We were looking at, inflation was double digit at that time.
Your brother was a partner.
My brother, yeah. I mean, he went to Stanford, mathematics and electronics. He went to Tandem. He was a hardware designer for 10 years. He went to Harvard, got an MBA, and then he came and worked with me. And it was great.
What did he
We'd look
do?
at,
What did he do in the business? Was he more of the finance?
oh yeah. We'd look at spreadsheets every day and figure out what we could do and what we couldn't do, and it was great. We had a really good time with that. Um, and it was crazy because like I said, at that moment that we sold, everybody wanted to buy us and take us to that next level. And we were like leveraged out totally,
Yeah,
and things were scary.
you
Well,
had debt.
things had gotten, well, it was supply had caught up with demand. Okay.
Okay, and so
Number
you were
one.
seeing that, yep, that
So
maybe.
there were people that wanted in on it, and they were willing to, sell stuff at a ridiculous price on what we called net never terms, like 10 months and things like that. We couldn't afford to do that, and we were looking at that. And well, there were a bunch of things, and currency was not looking good for the things were getting much more expensive. So there was like it was real attractive. And so we sold, and that was good in a way because we found,
You were happy with that.
well, what happened though is I wound up working with Trek, and that was a perfect match. And I worked real hard to make that happen behind the scenes. It was nuts.
So
You know,
I'm trying to follow the timing here. So in 91,
Well, 91 things got tight. 92, 93. We sold our company to a company called Ann Lynn, my brother and I first.
okay.
Ann
What
Lynn.
What's your
and
brother's
with
name?
Rick
Rick. Okay,
Fisher.
so
Yeah,
you and Rick
and we
sold to a Taiwanese company. I'm assuming that they were the ones doing the frames for you. Is that right?
they did, and they did frames for us. They did bikes for us for a
Okay,
period of time,
so that made
and things
sense,
were good.
and
But
they
then
helped
when
you
they
guys.
purchased us, when they owned us, they used us as a cash cow and a dumping ground, flat out. It was like a Harvard Business School lesson, you know.
What did that
Oh
mean?
man, well, it's like, well, cash cow is like, I go to, I said this price. I'd look at it, the price they were offering us, as their sub. We're a subsidiary of them, wholly owned, and it's ridiculous. It's like, hey, you got to be kidding me, man. I know I can get 20% lower. They said, oh no, man, everything's gone up in price. All this bullshit. So I go to Taiwan,
I see
I
it.
spec it out with three other companies and come in with 20% lower. Here it is. Here's the what I just got. Here's the quote I got these. Three of them, suckers. It's like I was angry. And then, they do stuff like give me last year's equipment. How can I sell that on this year's bike? It was real like time related at that time, for Shimano equipment. And bikes with cracks in the head too that have been painted over. Hey, yeah, 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 yeah. It's like one problem after another and then dump it on me and they're having a problem. So company like just went there are all kinds of people making offers and I basically found a way to find it and satisfy all the parties and make it happen. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But I got
So,
really good people, really good friends, and I really listen hard and figure it out. And sometimes you got to do, backflips and things like that. And and it's this whole thing. If you're going to sell your company, you're going to be owned, and they're going to do whatever they want to do. Absolutely,
of
of
course.
course. And so you got to pick people you really like what they're going for and everything. And that's what I found, with the group in Wisconsin, because those guys, some of our guys, they'd laugh at them behind their backs and everything, and the cheesy slogans and cheers and stuff. And I say, look, dudes, those guys have got the best numbers. Figure it out. And that's like, that was a thing. First time I came back from Japan, I sort of had a reverse culture shock of how exquisitely lazy my people were and entitled. And it's like, but everything's changed since then. I will say, our whole makeup, in this community in Marin County, it's like, they come from all over the world now. It's like I was saying before, and that's fine, because they all share in one thing. They're real smart and they get it. It's really good. And that's the way it's always been. You find out, they're really stupid and really smart people evenly spread around the whole world, and it's
That's
your
true.
responsibility to figure it out.
Yeah,
And you got to figure it out. And the way you do that is, man, you ask questions, but you also listen.
listen.
Yeah. And then I like walking around because you can't lie there, man. It's like, is your loading dock empty or full? There's this really obvious stuff sometimes. It's like,
Yeah,
what's that? Oh,
there's a saying in basketball. They say ball don't lie. It's like if the ball goes
ball
in,
don't
it
lie,
goes in.
man. It
If it
goes
doesn't
in, it
go
doesn't
in,
go in.
it's not
There's
going
some
in.
reason, yeah, man. Didn't
Ball don't
happen.
lie. No.
Yeah,
So you
that's true.
so
Yeah.
there's okay. So I'm trying to put this together just so we can help the people understand what happened. So your brother Rick left, or did he continue to work with you when you were owned by the
No, he
Taiwanese?
did. He left,
He left.
and I continued on. With the bike company. He left, and he does the software for the UC system for the last long time. It's crazy. He knows where all it's nuts. He knows where all knobs and levers are, and I don't think anybody else on earth does. So he's got somebody following. I've been saying, Rick, you never get out of this alive, man. You got to have somebody follow you around. So he's got somebody following him around, figuring it all out. Because it's like a classic thing. Like if one guy goes like that, and they hire five people to figure it out forensically. This happens
Wow.
all the time. It's like that's the thing about business. It's like people ask, "Oh, is this?" Well, what's the fundamental problem? And I'll tell you what the fundamental problem. We've met them. It's us, humans. I mean, a great one is incredible. Like Lynette. Oh my God, she works for Doug White, and she's like, she's a miracle. She's worked for me in the past, and she'd do the job of 5 or 4 humans, and not suffer over it, and just make everybody happy with the thing and get it right all the time.
But those types of people are pretty rare.
It's right. But the fact that they exist, you got to believe, you got to understand that
But they do.
there's a lot of potential in humans.
And
Humans
how
are
often?
amazing. So
Right.
like you can't live with them, but man, you sure can't live without them. And what's the
So
point? It's like that. And we're starting to face this. It's like I'm starting to do more stories with AI and everything, and it works really well. It's
sure
really
does.
cool.
Sure
It
does.
makes me, it inspires me, makes me happy to see that sometimes. If somebody's like figured it out there in a way, in a cool way. That's amazing.
There's
So
gonna, but there's gonna be a lot of bland content
oh,
out there. I think I've seen
oh
what AI can
yeah.
do, and it's not as interesting as that yet. I think you have to put a human spin on it. I mean, you can do a lot of the
You're
initial
quite
things.
correct. That's the only real benefit that'll come, is somebody that takes the time to have that, you bounce off of that and then create something.
Well,
It's
that's
good
why I
as it's
do.
good as a bounce. It's not you're right. It's not completely.
That's
You
why I
can't be.
do. That's why I do this is because what I saw was in cycling media that there was a lot of the dog being wagged by the brands in cycling media,
Oh
and
yeah.
no one telling the actual story. And so that's where I saw this opportunity, was to go in and see, because at the end of the day, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but oftentimes the media is just regurgitated press releases from the brand,
Oh yeah. I know.
and
It's just what I'm saying. And it's
because
also, I mean,
because of
yeah,
the
it's like my best buddy immediately at Bicycling Magazine was Bill Fields. What was he? He was the head of ad sales. Gary, Gary, you can't treat these guys this way. Give them a chance, right?
I
So
mean,
yeah,
and they're
absolutely.
and they're suffering, and I know that they're suffering, and I have, podcasting fortunately is a much has a very low cost of production, so you have to find these opportunities to, but I think if you don't tell a good story, or if you don't bring something that's unique, you're gonna have a hard time keeping people's
Oh yeah.
attention.
Well, it's like all the video content guys. I mean, all the YouTube guys. There's a lot of them now. They're not on the they're not on the schedule that everybody else is on. The whole thing of like, you're gonna like, we'll show you all the stuff, next year's stuff, but the embargo schedule, and they get the samples, and they get this and they get that. No, it's like stuff for our fans send in, or I went out and bought it myself. And
Sure, yeah,
I mean,
they're gonna find what people want to talk about,
oh yeah,
and
and their numbers are good, and
they're really good. Well,
you
what
know,
amazes me is you're seeing how the old cable the old cable paradigm and the
yeah,
magazine paradigm has sort of crumbled, and I don't think
oh yeah.
not everybody's ready to admit it yet.
Well,
uh
that's the ones that they've got a big nut to pay. They
yeah,
paid too
yeah,
much.
yes, they
They
do.
paid too much, and they got a nut to pay, buddy. I mean, they're behind the eight ball a bit more. It's just like the guys making auto parts right now, gasoline auto parts. They're all like, "Hey, wait a minute. I've been made redundant, or I've
Obsolete,
made
yeah.
obsolete and everything."
Well,
It's crazy.
I do this test. I talk to people. I'll ask you in the evening, what do you spend your time? What media do you consume?
Um, I cook dinner and I take care of the kids. Seriously, I got
But
an embargo on all the screen shit.
you consume some media, don't you?
I
Maybe
I don't,
watch a tablet.
because I well, yeah. No, I'll do on the phone. I'll scroll through a bunch of crap,
There you go, scrolling through
It's a
crap,
baloney. Yeah, yeah,
and,
total. But it's like, and that's like the worst, because I can't. If I got the kids, I got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and the only way you can keep them off of like weird stuff is like either show the media or no media, and
yeah.
none for nobody on the table or around the place, the whole thing.
Well, but what I'm
And
saying is
yeah,
the world has changed,
oh
and
yeah.
you call it crap. I just say, it is what it is. I mean, people said that TV was crap when TV came out, so I mean,
No, no. Well, yeah, with TV, I'll say for TV, it spoke to you. You didn't speak to it. So we raised a whole generation of people. You say hi when they're walking down the street. They don't know what to say. Now it's you respond. At least you respond. People respond back and forth.
Because it was
You
so
try all that.
it was so homogenous.
Well,
Let's
it
see.
was a one-way show.
Right,
You
right.
couldn't
Three
you couldn't
channels.
talk to it.
Right.
Oh yeah, and that whole thing and fighting over the channels, the whole crazy thing. It's like I gave up on that a long time ago, and I think, and I got to say, I mean, my wife is incredible. For like the amount of energy we put into doing stuff with the kids, and it's like all about keeping them off of the screen. And so, like,
You have
I
a
feel like
3-year-old and a 5-year-old?
no. I got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old.
5-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
No, it's crazy. My wife's younger than me, obviously,
Yeah,
but
obviously.
the whole thing. But no, it's amazing. It's been crazy
Congratulations.
because I got 6 kids total. I'm trying to repopulate the earth. Oh
It
brother.
needs it.
It's funny. It does literally. It's funny as far as the economies go and everything. The only place that's growing is Africa as far as population goes. And around here, it's like you can't afford to raise a kid.
Gary,
It's really
we
expensive.
can't go down that rabbit hole, Gary. We got to
I
stay
know.
on topic here.
I know. We go crazy. Let's stay on topic. Let's
Okay.
talk bikes because bikes
Yes.
are good, man.
Yes. Okay. So
Cut that last piece.
no, it's fine. It's fine. So
Yeah.
you had Trek in your sights.
Mhm.
Why did you want to do a deal with Trek? And how did that work? Because it wasn't your company at the time, or was it still part of your company?
Right. It wasn't.
So why?
I had to make a side deal.
Okay, so how did that work?
They wanted to take me on. They liked me, and I worked really close with Bob Reed, who was the head of all production. It was great. I worked really close with him and like I just get to write my own ticket and make stuff work. And I had a deal if I could bring sales up to 55 million. I mean, when I had it, it was only 10 million, a year and everything. And then they double my salary and I hit the numbers, man. I got
Congratulations.
everything in a row. I'm good at negotiating price, in Taiwan, which you had to be because, that was my money, man, for the longest time. And I really cared about it and I figured it out, and I'd spend the time, and, spend the time listening to people and everything. So, and then with Bob Reed, it was a breeze because it's really great when you got somebody that's really straight up. They tell you what can happen, what the possibilities are, and everything.
But Bob Reed was he the CEO at the time?
No, he was the head of all production.
Head of production. Okay, and so you
So
were.
like, and they were Trek Bicycle was making bikes down to $550 price point at the time I went to them, which is 1993. It was amazing.
But
They were really good.
Gary Fisher was at the top range then, I'm assuming.
Well, they had a top range. We had a top range. We had separate sales groups, and we
Okay.
had a really good sales guy, Ira Langer. He was from from New York City, man, and he was the best. He just motivated our guys and made it work. And we had a great team of
So it was
salespeople.
a separate brand within the Trek
Yeah, yeah, because
organization.
Trek figured, they had expanded in the United States. They were the dominant brand at the time in an area where there'd be 10 bike shops. They had like 5 or 6 of them, and they wanted to get another 3 shops. And they couldn't do it with the Trek brand, because they would be betraying the current dealers. You know, they don't like you to open another place, half a mile down the road.
Sure.
So we open it as a Fisher store. That
Okay.
was the strategy right then, and it worked really well. Our guys were like doing great in numbers. The sales team, and then Trek was really good at getting the fundamentals right. That is, like what terms you're on, what level, you're buying thing, is at, what we got in stock and what we're going to ship you. And it all comes true. And let me tell you, that's so rare. Only half the businesses are that way.
It's hard, yeah. The
It's
timing
hard
and
to get it right.
oh
But to
yeah.
be on the horn with this supplier that's lame and your customers right there is a completely embarrassing situation. And you could, You can like,
Absolutely.
I'm never buying from those guys again. Well, that wasn't Trek's thing at all. They had good, smiley, happy people that would figure it out. I mean, it was a classic, East Coast, West Coast, we'd be pointing fingers at each other, and those guys would just take care of it. And the last person, I mean, nobody goes home until the last person's done, one of those sort of teamwork things where they put it all together. We don't do that stuff. On the other hand, we don't take an idea and march it around a table, round table until it's oatmeal. So that's, you get real different qualities. You did, especially then, but now less. And that's the way it is all over the US. I mean, you got to really travel far to get a cup of coffee where it's you can see all the way to the bottom of the cup. You used to find that all the time, back in the like places that weren't up so-called up to date. And these days, no way. Everybody, like you said, they travel, they see it, they seen it on the Food Channel, whatever. I mean, like you were saying, we had like 4 stations back then. Well, try like 340 now.
But that's progress, isn't it?
It's progress in a way, but it's like it's like, I mean, it's total progress, in a lot of ways. It's a beauty in a lot of measures. But the problem is, man, is like you can get like endlessly dipped in the same sauce. Because that's sort of what's happened. That's the other thing is like American towns and American cities, man, you wake up and if you didn't have the signs or your GPS or
They
like
all
your
look the
phone to
same.
tell you where they all
Yeah.
look the same,
Yeah,
and
no,
they look,
the
you know,
homogenization, I agree with you. I
and
live
he said,
in,
yeah.
I actually live in Italy, Gary. I don't know.
Oh,
You
you,
knew that. Yeah. Did I
and
trick you?
that's the opposite, right? In a
Um,
way, why is
no, no, I
okay?
don't think
You're
so. I
right.
think it's sort of global. But yeah, I've been,
They're doing that. Yeah, they're
yeah,
doing
I
that,
mean,
but they're at least the truck stops have really good food.
it's a bit more resilient here. I mean, I think the culture
Yeah,
here is a bit
yeah,
more, splintered, where in the US it's a bit more homogenized just because of the
yeah.
US is so much younger and
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
But I'm from Omaha, Nebraska originally. As about as Midwestern as they get. But
Yeah. I mean, my mom did the family tree and then we, we're a few generations in California and it's like, yeah, Nebraska, Montana, all these, other places and
Homestead,
fortunes were made,
Homestead.
like, yeah, yep.
So to close the chapter, it looks like of the Trek bicycle. How did that journey kind of conclude? Because are you still with Trek, or are you done
No,
working with them?
we just separated, because I really wanted to, I was interested in getting back into uh making things.
Okay.
And I'm with some young guys that we're going to do a subscription service. And where they came from is from batteries. And they've been making the batteries for vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, big ones. And these batteries recharge faster. And it's a lithium ion battery, but there's less material. You use they are about half the weight, about twice the power, full recharge in a half an hour, 50% in 5 minutes.
So
So
what's the service exactly?
well, it's these are electric helicopters. You've seen them. They got a whole bunch of little motors on them and everything.
Okay.
Like Lilium is one of the brands. A
Okay.
German brand that they put their batteries into.
And you're an
And
investor
so
in this
they got a
project.
they got a facility in Silicon Valley, and then they also have one in China where they actually make batteries there. So they've been doing this for about 10 years. They've got about 15 patents, and including the method of how they do the research, which I find really fascinating. I love that stuff. I mean, all material handling has changed in the last 15 years. It's like an incredible science these days of making stuff. But now we getting into the 3D printing, and
Sure.
man, they're making weldable 6061 now, in 3D printing. It's like in steels and all kinds of stuff. So that's a really incredible technology because you can make something really complex, interior. And that's what a lot of this interior like routing and all that stuff is a real pain because you can't reach in there and tack stuff down and do all that. But now you can design a tube that the tubes and all that within it are part of the structure. You know what I'm saying? Because uh, things like 3D printing, as well as incredible programs and and software that can enable you to figure it out. Sort of it's crazy. Talk about rapid prototype. I mean, it's like just this whole like knowledge that you can have, almost instantaneously with modern software and computers and everything. So, everything's working together to like really it's exciting to me still. That's really what makes me run. And I just been things change, it's like I got hired by dad, the son took over. The guy was a great the head of all the product and everything, he got killed in a car wreck. So things change, you can't help it. And I had a great run. I still got a ton of friends at Trek and everything.
So right now, you're working on your most recent emails from looks like Morel Bikes as well.
That's correct.
Are you
Morel
consulting,
e-bikes.
or is this a company you own?
Well, I got a part of the company, and
Okay.
we're going whole hog. It's really been great. I went to a World Cup, downhill, mountain bike, downhill cross country World Cup. That was a lot of fun. That was a great time. Really significant though. The next week I went to Frankfurt and
Eurobike.
the show there.
I was there. We didn't get to see
It
each
was
other.
incredible. It was like I've got some really great, people want to partner with me. They remember me from the day and they watched me in the whole thing. And
the best, these are the
so
best. This is still
uh,
considered, the genesis of the mountain bike, and you had the top range kind of.
well, we got ideas for this whole thing that I'm talking about too now, the current thing and people and everything and politics, and it's great. And I got ideas and they know it. And it was just so invigorating to be around, and my friends from Asia that have done really, really well, and know what they're doing. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, those guys, they were the engineers and, well, not just engineers, but real entrepreneurs that, China at one point said, hey, you guys from Taiwan want to come here and we'll give you land and we'll give you a lot of labor. And that was an inflection point for China. It was so smart. I mean, for China, oh my God, and that whole thing. And everybody made a lot of money. And, so the Taiwan guys, I got a ton of respect for, they've worked super hard, super smart. And, they don't sit around. I mean, what's going to happen? Well, for sure, China's not going to crush them because that's, ruining an incredible asset
Sure.
of people, and people are the asset. And we got to remember that all the time. People are the asset. So, yeah, I love just being involved in, these people and everything that do things and get stuff done.
Well, let's maybe next time we talk, I want to hopefully you'll come back. We can talk again about the project, this Morel Bikes project that you're working on, or anything else.
There'll be quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah, in fact, or we can talk about ChatGPT if you want to. It's up to you. AI.
Yeah, I could learn from you. That's for sure.
Oh,
it
I doubt
fascinates.
I doubt it.
Oh, come on. No, but
sounds like
you do that off. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like I could learn actually quite a bit from content marketing. It sounds like that's what was kind of one of the part of the secret sauce at Gary Fisher. Sounds like to me.
It was, and part of what's happened in the last few years, I inherited all that stuff. It's nuts. All this backstage photography. Oh, it's crazy. I mean, just like shots and shots and shots of, wardrobe shots, and different things, tools that were used in Hollywood and everything. Oh, I got like everybody's phone numbers to call us, all these famous actors, home addresses and home phone number. There it is. It's like all this. What do you do with your stuff? This is the stuff I'm doing. And it's like that's like a great thing right now, like people my age. It's like none of the kids really want the stuff, right? I did have a tremendous experience. My oldest son was up from LA with a friend of his. He's Nick Fisher. He's got El Prado. It's a hipster bar that's going crazy. And you know, he
in Los
comes up
Angeles.
as, yeah, at Echo Park on Sunset Boulevard. Anyway, he comes up with another Nick. Nick's a woodworker. And I've got all this redwood in the basement that is beautiful, that my father collected from all over the place. And I gave it all to Nick. It's like gave a ton of it, it's like crazy. He's going like, man, this is the Wagyu beef of wood.
Of wood.
Yeah. And it's like the gleam in his eye and everything. Cause I see this, it's like they got a car show here. Well, it happens. It's happening again. And some of the cars are ridiculous. It's like from locals. It's like one of my neighbors here. He's got a $250 million Ferrari, right? It's a super rare Ferrari, right? And that's down there. And you're down there, and it's like there's no teenagers to speak of. And the teenagers are there. They get this sneer like on their face. And it's like, Daddy, can you spend it on me instead of your car? And it's sort of like,
no, absolutely not.
yeah, right.
That's not
right.
gonna happen.
Right.
It's mine.
It's my toy, and
Yep,
everything.
I'll get you to college and that stuff, but the rest is mine.
Right. I know.
Rightly so. Rightly so. But
Yeah.
Gary, thank you so much. I hope
Always,
we can do this again, because I think we just sort of scratched the surface on a lot of things.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I wandered too much.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But so
All
can
right.
you just tell people like where they can find you on if they want to come and find you on, I don't know, social media, if you want to tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn just as Gary Fisher.
That's how I
And
found
then yeah, that's easy. And then I'm on Twitter, Gary_Fisher. It's not verified or anything. It's just me. And I get, and on Instagram, same
Okay.
thing, Gary_Fisher. That's it. And you'll find me. If you can't like figure it out, you're not looking very hard.
Nope.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.